Welcome, everyone. We're shifting now to sports now as we continue coverage of the passing of the legendary Bud Grant. We all know that the outpouring of love and stories today for Bud have been absolutely incredible. Earlier, you heard Greg Coleman give an impromptu Sunday sermon on Bud. It was poignant and beautiful, and quite honestly, just a fraction of what Greg and I talked about. Here's part two with Greg Coleman as we honor the late, great Bud Grant.
There were so many different facets to Bud. He was intriguing. He was a jokester. He was a stern but fair disciplinarian. But more than anything else, he was a respecter of man. As a player, he expected you to do your job.
A 6 below in his golf shirt.
And I'm all bundled up in a fur and hat and gloves and all this stuff. And Bud comes out from the sideline in a short sleeve shirt with no undie on. And I said, you know what? This is a special man. And he really was in more ways than one. I can remember a lot of our private conversations. I can remember some of our public spats. I can remember our arguments. He saying that my hands were too small to be a holder for PATs and extra points. And I told him that if my hands were too small and if I dropped as many passes, if I dropped as many balls as his receivers did, I'd be out of a job. And so I got the last one on him for that because he finally admitted, he said, well, Touch, I guess you were a pretty good holder.
Many people are saying he felt he could show his softer side to people that he knew well in these later years. And that's apparent. I'm seeing pictures that people are giving me today. And if he let you in, you were in, right?
Oh, absolutely. But I would have to say that his favorite player, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and people will talk about Fran Tarkington and Rashad, and the list goes on and on and on. But his favorite player was Jim Marshall. There's no doubt about it. He had that infinity, that love for Jim Marshall, that special bond between a player and a coach. Now, don't get me wrong. He had special bonds and great feelings for many of his players. Mm-hmm. But Jim Marshall, very, very special man, had a very, very special relationship. But I would say that Bud had the ability to have special relationships with his quarterbacks, his players who were rebels, because Bud was a rebel himself. And you're right, Don, he had a softer side for punters and kickers because he had to have the wherewithal to know how much to push, when to back off and give you a pat on the butt.
Well, let me ask you this. You brought up sometimes you have these little spats, right? And there's respect on both sides with that. Did you earn greater respect from Bud Grant by speaking your voice and your truth to him?
Well, I think I spoke more by actions. There were a few not so good kicks, and I would go and take full responsibility for that. And he would look at me and say, okay, get the next one. And sometimes that's all you needed from a coach. There were times when, nobody wanted to throw anybody under the bus. But, as a captain, we didn't have C's back then on our chest, but Bud named me captain for several years of special teams. And that meant more to me than anything else because you didn't want to let him down because you knew that responsibility meant so much to so many players. This is a National Football League and you were deemed a captain of the Minnesota Vikings special teams. And you did everything that you could to maintain that respect, to maintain that honor, and to take responsibility as a leader. So it was, yeah, we had some difficult conversations, but we also had some conversations. I can remember back during the strike years, one of those years, and it was difficult back then. Mike Lynn was the general manager, and some of the guys wanted to cross the line, and I was a player rep, and Bud called me in the office. He said, Touch, listen, whatever you guys do it as a team. If you come across the line, come as a team. If you stay out as a team. And again, that was one of those areas of responsibilities, and guys would say, oh, hell, he's just a punter. No, he's one of your captains. And so he gave us the backup the respect, and the courage to do some difficult things during some difficult times, during the quote unquote business times of the tough times of football. But also, he would laugh. He was a jokester. I mean, the snakes that he used to bring around the office, and he used to scare poor Birdsey to death. I mean, Birdsey was scared of a flea. But it was a great time, Don, and a lot of great memories that I will remember about Bud Grant.